Welcome back to a special edition of America's Nightly Scoreboard. Our next guests have their fingers on the pulse of employers' needs, and they know what industries are creating hot job prospects. Here to score the job market are Tori Johnson. She is founder and CEO of Women for Hire. Her company produces recruiting events for women. She's also author of Fired to Hired. And also with us here is Gary Goldstein. He is founder and CEO of Whitney Group. They are an executive search firm specializing in the financial services industry. We don't want to tell you how hard that industry has been hit by the recession. Mark Arrow is CEO of placement firm HEADCOUNT Management. And from Chicago, we welcome John Challenger. He is Chief Executive Officer of Challenger, Gray & Christmas. They provide outplacement services to middle and upper management. And I have to admit, it biases. John and I have known each other for about 20 years, so I'm going to go to him first. John, an overall view of what we need most right now from our job markets. What do we need to see an improvement in the economy overall before we start seeing hiring going on?
Well, companies are coming out of a long recession, the longest since the Great Depression, so they're just very cautious because they're worried that they could start to make hiring moves, and all of a sudden the economy would go back into recession. It would go back into a double dip. They've seen that happen before in this recession, so it's hard to go out and create a lot of jobs. And you also then have the overhang, just kind of like in the housing market. You have this overhang of people who are working part-time for them that they could ramp up to full-timers. You could ask them to work, some of your people to work overtime. So right now, we've got a lot to kind of work off before employers really begin to say it's time to start hiring, at least in big numbers.
All right. Well, Mark, in what industries are we more likely to find jobs available than others?
Well, we have a really unique perspective on this. We just handle temp employees. And we're seeing growth when companies want to grow in, say, engineering, in IT, medical, healthcare. We're seeing them hire temps first so they can avoid the burdens and the administrative costs to start hiring employees, get into the market, see how the economy goes.
So when you're looking at these temp markets, people who hire temporarily, who are not sure of their long-term plans, what areas are getting off of the temps and going into long-term hires? Interesting.
The financials, we see they'll do longer-term temps these days, and then they'll convert people over to the permanent.
Interesting. They'll train them to become permanent employees. Well, that fits right into what you do, Gary. Is the financial service industry turning around?
It's been turning around for the past 6 months. There's a general redistribution of human capital. People are fleeing a lot of the large institutions and going to more entrepreneurial, mid-market, mid-cap firms.
To do what? What specific jobs are opening up now in financial services?
Well, the credit markets have been incredibly attractive. The spreads are huge, and so a lot of the traders and salesmen have been leaving the big banks and starting up small broker-dealers. They're not so small anymore.
Growing boutique firms.
Growing boutique firms, hedge funds, and private equity firms who've been disintermediating the street for years are taking advantage of that outflow, and they're setting up their own capital markets businesses. They're investing in some of the small regional firms and putting some capital behind them, and basically looking to replace Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and some of the firms that have disappeared.
What about the worst hit, the real estate banking? There's a lot of refinancing going on. Are people hiring there?
You know, it's actually come alive in the last 3 or 4 months. And if you actually look at the business this year, there's been a fair amount of re-equitization in the real estate markets, and REIT businesses picking up a little bit. There's more M&A dialogue. I would expect by year end you'll see some more recruiting in the real estate industry.
Well, you mentioned the magic word recruiting, Tori, and you're on the front lines. You go right to these recruiting meetings. You must hear incredible stories. There are some awful stories out there, but there are also some winning stories. What are some of the best stories you're hearing now?
There are winning stories, and I think what's really important, especially what Gary's saying, is that hiring hasn't come to a halt. And so if we think about the headlines that, financial services is dead, and clearly it's not dead at all. I'll talk to people who follow the headlines, and so they see, there's a nursing shortage. And, just a couple days ago, I talked to a young woman who graduated from college. She's just taken her exam to be an RN, and she can't get a job because the shortage isn't in entry-level positions. And so she thought, great, I'm going to go for this career, but I've got to get some experience. And so for her and for others like her, it's really about pounding pounding the pavement right now. And what I see are people getting hired every day who are not only exceptionally qualified, but even more importantly, are really good job seekers, really know how to work the system to get hired.
John, we've touched on the fact of people changing careers and having to retool themselves for a new career. Is a lot of that going on, or have a lot of people given up on their own career and trying to transfer to a new one?
Well, no question, some people are going back to school and getting some training and education to retool themselves and start anew. But there are also a lot of people who are expanding their options. They're not just looking in the one location or the one industry that they might have in a better time. They're not only looking for full-time jobs. And so they're opening up geographically. They're opening up and saying, I could take my functional expertise, the field I've been in, and move to a different industry that's more healthy. And I might even take a part-time job or an assignment and use that as an audition to hopefully turn it into a full-time job.
Well, Mark, are a lot of the temps that you employ, are they people that had full careers who are using a temp as a transition job before they get a new career?
Absolutely. We're seeing companies now, they're starting out people almost like the internships of days gone by. People will start out, they'll take a lesser job, they'll get started, they'll get their foot in the door, and then they ingratiate themselves with the company and they get hired full time.
Is it possible to do that in financial services?
It's very difficult to re-engineer.
You really have to have a very particular expertise in order to strike it there.
And one of the serious problems is that many of these people have been used to making significant amount of money over the years, you know, very, very significant compensation packages. It's very hard to replicate that in most other industries. And they've got fixed nuts that they've got to cover in terms of their overhead.
Yeah.
And so it's been a real struggle for the past couple of years. A lot of wealth has been lost.
Tori, who is recruiting right now? Who are the buyers, so to speak, in this employment market?
You know what I see, fortunately, I'd say not good for my own business, employers across all industries. So, for example, we have retailers, technology companies, aerospace giants, the federal government, nonprofits. I mean, really across the board.
But some of these industries are still hurt, particularly the retail business, et cetera. So what kind of person are they more likely to try to seek out?
Sure. So retail, for example, I'm doing a big project right now for Walmart, and they're looking for everything from their very top store managers down to hourly positions within that store, also district management, so things that aren't necessarily on the corporate level, but certainly aren't just hourly positions either. You know, good compensation, I mean, six-figure compensation in an industry that we hear is not hiring at all.
Well, John, I guess the lesson here is no matter how bad the economy is, there is always room for a smart, hard-working, honest person in the workforce.
Well, there's just no question about that. Even in the worst times, back in February, which is kind of the low in the market, we lost 500,000 jobs in that month. But there were 4.8 million jobs lost and 4.3 million people who were hired. So the market is very dynamic. And right now, we're seeing a lot more of that hiring than we were back then.
Do you guys think that the worst is over, starting with you, Mark?
Absolutely. We're seeing hiring. We see medium, large, small companies. They want to bring on temp employees. They come to us. We enable them to grow. We enable them to avoid the burdens and the administrative costs of employees. Absolutely.
Gary, it's hard to predict anything with financial services, but do you think it's over, the worst?
I think the worst is over. I think this is a lot of what's driving the markets is psychology of the market, and that seems to be improving, and I think we're heading into a decent time.
Tori, what do you think?
I agree. I would say I'm disturbed that it's taking some people a long time, longer than they would have anticipated, longer than they can financially handle to find work. But I think that the pace of the layoffs has certainly slowed, and so from that perspective, hopefully employers are going to be hiring at a faster pace soon.
John, are you going to be the one person to rain on this parade?
No, I'm positive, too. I think we came out of the recession in June. I don't think it's with a bang. I do think we're probably moving now into a period of jobless recovery where unemployment is going to stay in this 9 to 10% range for a while. But I do think that things are much brighter. People are getting interviews, they're getting hired, and we weren't seeing that over the winter.
Good. John Challenger, Mark Arrow, Gary Goldstein, and Tori Johnson, thank you all. Appreciate it.